Sechus Nedarim Daf is entirely Agadata, speaking at first about Rabbi Akiva, stories about Rabbi Akiva and the neder that was made against him by his father-in-law Kalpa and some other discussion of Rabbi Akiva and how he became rich in the end. The Gemara will then talk briefly about Rabbi Shub ben Hanani and Rabbi Huda, and then the Gemara will discuss what the terms in the Mishnah of Tormuta refer to, and a bit of discussion about different types of figs. Let's begin. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva became Mekudeshes, he became engaged to the daughter of Kalba Sivu, a very wealthy man. Kalba Sivu heard about it, and Rabbi Akiva was not wealthy in his own right, he was just a shepherd. And he became upset about it, and he swore, he made a neder that Rabbi Akiva and his family would not have any hana from Kalba Sivu's property, and he became very poor. The wedding went ahead anyway in secret, and they had nothing. So they would sleep in straw because they couldn't afford pillows and blankets. And he would pull bits of straw out of her hair. And he said to her, if I would get for you a special piece of jewelry that has an image of Yerushalayim. In order to comfort them that there were people who had even less than them, Eliyahu Hanavi came and he stood at the entrance and he called out, does anybody who has a little bit of straw? My wife just gave birth and I don't have any straw for her to lie on. Can somebody give me a bit of straw? So Rabbi Akiva said to his wife, you see that there are some people who are even poorer than us. They can't even afford any straw. So she said to him, go learn in yeshiva. He went and he learned yeshiva for 12 years. During that time, he was learning before Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. At the end of 12 years, he came back to come home to his wife, and he heard that there was a Rasha. The Gemara here calls him a Rasha. The Gemara Ksubis doesn't call him a Rasha, just calls him or her a neighbor. Here it says that it was a Rasha, and he was saying to Rabbi Akiva's wife, your father was correct for making a neder against your husband and you, because look, first of all, he's not from your class, he's from a much lower socioeconomic strata, and second of all, look what he did to you, he left you as a living widow for all these years. So she said, if it would be up to me, he would go back and learn another 12 years. Now, Rabbi Akiva overheard that, and he said, since I've been given permission to go back, I'm going to go right back. He turned around, didn't stop in to say hello, we turned right back, and went back to learn another 12 years in yeshiva. At the end of 24 years, he came with 24,000. Here it says 24,000 pairs of Talmidim. The Gemara Ksubas just says 12,000 pairs of Talmidim, which is 24,000 altogether. And they came to return to the town in which his wife lived. She also went out to greet him. Now, there's two different versions in the Rishonim as to whether or not she knew that it was Rabbi Akiva, or she just knew that it was Talmid Chacham that she was going to greet. So that same Rasha came and said, where are you going? Dressed as you are, they're not going to allow you to speak to him or see with him at all. But she said, either she understood it was her husband, or even if she did not, she was saying that a Talmid Chacham of that level will not care about what I can afford. So when she came, and she appeared before him, so the Talmidim wanted to push her away because she was too close, she was interfering, and he said, leave her, because everything that I have and everything that you have, everything that you learned from me is all on her credit, meaning that she was the one who sent to yeshiva. Now, Kalba Sivu, his father-in-law, came and he asked for a het for his neder without realizing that he was talking to the subject of the neder, and Rabbi Akiva did give him a heter for the neder, and then he went and he split half his property with him. Now the Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva became rich in 6 different ways. So first was this, that he received half the property of a Kalba Sivu. The other is by the eye of the deer of the ship. So that refers to the fact that they used to have a head of a deer or a gazelle on a ship to show as a sign that it should be light as a deer is, and they would often fill it up with gold coins. Once happened that the people of a certain ship forgot and they left the deer on the shore, and therefore it was Hefker there, and Rabbi Akiva is the one who found it. Second thing that happened to him was with a treasure chest. There was a time when he gave money to somebody to go and purchase something for him as an investment to try to make some money off it. He gave him 4 zuz, and the only thing that the guy could find was a box. He brought back the box, and they put it on the shore of the sea, and she came and she said, okay, let's see what's in it. They opened it up, and they found that it was filled with gold coins, because it was a ship that had put all its riches in there, and the ship sunk, and only this box was left behind. Now, there was another story that happened with a group of Arab merchants. The Gemara doesn't say what that was. And there was a story of the Matronisa, the woman. The Gemara doesn't say what that is either, but the Rishonim explain there was a time when Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim needed money, didn't have anything to eat, so he went fundraising, and he came to this woman and he said, "Can you lend me money until I'm able to collect enough, and then I'll pay you?" And she lent him the money, but she said, "I need to have guarantors, I need an Arif." So they said that Hashem and the sea will be the Arif. When the time to pay came, Rabbi Akiva was sick, he wasn't well. Some Rishonim say he didn't have the money, and therefore he wasn't able to pay, so she went to the shore and she said, Hashem and the sea, you are the guarantors, so I'm coming to you to collect. At that moment, the daughter of the Caesar, off in Rome, went crazy, and she threw all her jewels into a box and threw it into the ocean. The ocean brought it to the feet of this woman who was standing on the seashore. As she said that, when Rabbi Akiva came to pay, she said to him, I already received the money from the Arev. As a matter of fact, he paid too much, I'm giving you the extra. That extra that she gave him, that is the riches that he received in this episode. Another case in which he became rich was from the wife of Turnus Rufus. Turnus Rufus was a man who used to start up with Rabbi Akiva in a Roman court, and Rabbi Akiva would answer him very soundly and roundly and severely and make him look silly. So Turnus Rufus' wife saw that he was upset, and so she said, what's this all about? And he explained what was happening. So she said, the Jews are always able to be tripped up by Avera. Let me try to tempt him with an Avera, and then we'll see that'll solve the problem. So he gave her permission. She went and she dressed up very fancy, and she appeared before him. So when he saw her, he spat, he cried, and he laughed. So she said, what's this all about? So he said, I'll explain two of the three. I won't explain the other ones. I spat because you come here trying to be who knows what, but you come from a disgusting drop of fluid just as every other human does. I cried because this great beauty that you have is going to end up deep in the ground one day. And why I laughed, I'm not going to tell you. The Gemara explains the reason that he laughed was because he saw that she was going to convert and end up marrying him in the end. Of course, that was not something he wanted to tell her, or that would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. She asked him, is there any way I could do tshuva? He said, sure. She went and she did tshuva. She was Megayer. She did come back and marry him and brought a lot of riches into the marriage as well. Now, the last incident is the story of Ketir Bar Shalom. The Gemara explains that in Mesachos Avodah Zarah, Daf Yud. All right, the Gemara now leaves Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara makes a similar story that happened with Rav Gamda, who gave 4 zuz to a person who traveled on ships to try to buy something for him as an investment, and he couldn't find anything. The only thing he was able to buy was a monkey. So he took the monkey back to Rav Gamda, but it escaped and went and hid in a hole somewhere in an attic or something. And they went and they searched after the monkey, and they had to dig after it. And when they found it, it was sitting on a pile of pearls. And the person who found them gave them all to Rav Gamda. The Rishonim explained he didn't have to, but as Miz Chasidus, he gave them to him, and he became wealthy because of that. The other one talks about Rishu ben Chananya. The Caesar said that Rishu ben Chananya. Rishu ben Chananya was a tremendous Talmid Chacham who represented the Jews in the court of the Caesar, but he was very ugly. So she said to him, how could it be that such knowledge and such wisdom is in such an ugly vessel? So he responded, look at your father's house. You see that your very fancy wine is put in what kind of jug? So she said, it's in a clay jug. So he said, I understand. Why such an ugly jug? All the world keeps their wine in clay jugs. Why do you, who are very rich, keep your wine in clay jugs as well? You should keep it in gold and silver jugs. So of course she did, but gold and silver spoils the wine, so the wine spoiled. So he said the same thing applies to Torah and to Chachma. Put in an ugly kli keeps it well. So she said, what do you mean? There are people who are very beautiful and are also very learned. He responded and said, if they would have been ugly, they would have learned much more and they would know much more. Now, next story, there was a lady who came before Yehuda of Narada with a court case, and he ruled against her. So she said, did your Rebbe Shmuel, would he rule this way as well? So Yehuda said, did you know my Rebbe Shmuel? She said, yeah, I knew him. He was short, he was fat, he was ugly, and he had big teeth. So Rebbe Yehuda said, did you come here to make fun of him? And he put her in Chirim, and she blew up and she died. All right, the Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah had mentioned an egg called a tormita egg. The Gemara wants to know what that is. The Gemara says that Shmuel said that this is what we know about a tormita egg. It is prepared by an eved who's worth 1,000 zuz, And the way that you make it is you place it in hot water 1,000 times and in cold water 1,000 times until it shrinks and becomes the size that a person can swallow it in one shot, like the size of a pill. And then it's used for medical purposes. Rishonim discussed the meaning of how the Gemara explains what they used to do with it. According to one approach, they would swallow it as a pill and it would make all pain go away. The other approach is that it would pass through the intestine and would come out. And when it came out, the doctor was able to see the marks on it and discover what was wrong with the person who swallowed it and use that information to treat him. Where it says that Shmuel was trying to figure out what was wrong with his intestines, and he stuck a reed inside, and it was obviously a painful experience, and it caused him to collapse. And the members of his household, they fainted or they pulled their hair out of their heads from worry at what he was doing to himself. More quotes a mission that says that somebody who's working on a type of figs called klufsin is not allowed to eat the type of figs called benos sheva. One is working on benos sheva is not allowed to eat the type of figs called klufsin. What's this all about? The Torah says that a person is allowed to eat from the type of produce that he's working on, but he's not allowed to eat from a slightly different min. Now, these are considered to be different min to the extent that if you're working on one, you cannot eat from the other ones. Now, what's klufsin? The Gemara says it's the type of figs that used to make a dish called lifti. The Gemara says that there was a person who gave his evet to his friend in order he should teach him 800 different types of courses, how to prepare them, in order that he should teach him 1,000 types, but he only taught him 800. So he took him to court in front of Rebbe, and Rebbe expressed shock that somebody would be so into food that he would want to know 1,000 different types of food, and he was surprised that there are even 800 that you could teach someone. And he said he quoted a pasuk in Eov, which is Nashisi Tova, Tiznach Mishalom Nafshi, Nashisi Tova, that our forefathers have seen such wealth, such pleasures, we haven't even seen them. And he meant to say, but you're so into them that you're going to sue over the extra 200 when you already have 800. Now, the Gemara says that Rebbe made a wedding for his son, Rebbe Shimon, and he paid an enormous sum of money to the wedding hall. He paid 24,000, 10,000. That's a number that comes to 240 million dinarim on the chuppah. And he did not invite Bar Kapara. The Rishonim was saying this because Bar Kapara was a bit of a joker. He was afraid he would make a joke and do something that he would not have appreciated. So Bar Kapara said, look at that. You're an Ovei Ritzana. He called him an Ovei Ritzana, one who violates the will, Ki'ilu, as it were. Obviously, he's referring to Rebbe, so he can't say that I mean it, but he was saying because he didn't invite him, he was criticizing him. So if one who violates Hashem's will has this amount of riches, think about those who keep his will, how great they will have. So Rebbe then went ahead and he did invite Bar Kapar. So now he spoke in praise of him, and he said, if somebody in this world has this level of riches for doing Hashem's will, imagine in the next world what kind of great riches and wealth he'll be able to have